The Mice and the Weasels. There was war between the mice and the weasels, in which the mice always got the worst of it, numbers of them being killed and eaten by the weasels. So they called a council of war, in which an old mouse got up and said, "It's no wonder why we are always beaten, for we have no generals to plan our battles and direct our movements in the field." Acting on his advice, they chose the biggest mice to be their leaders, and these, in order to be distinguished from the rank and file, provided themselves with helmets bearing large plumes of straw. They then led the mice to battle, confident of victory. But they were defeated, as usual, and were soon scampering as fast as they could to their holes. All made their way to safety without difficulty, except the leaders, who were so hampered by the badges of their rank that they could no longer get into their holes and fell easy victims to their pursuers. Greatness carries its own penalties. The Farmer and the Viper. One winter, a farmer found a viper, frozen and numb with cold, and out of pity picked it up and placed it in his bosom. The viper, no sooner revived by the warmth than it turned upon its benefactor and inflicted a fatal bite upon him. And as the poor man lay dying, he cried, "I have only got what I deserved for taking compassion on so villainous a creature." Kindness is thrown away upon the evil. Hercules and the Wagoner. A wagoner was driving his team along a muddy lane with a full load behind them, when the wheels of his wagon sank so deep into the mire that no efforts of his horses could move them. As he stood there, looking helplessly on and calling loudly at intervals upon Hercules for assistance, the god himself appeared and said to him, "Put your shoulder to the wheel, man, and goad on your horses, and then you may call on Hercules to assist you. If you won't lift a finger to help yourself, you can't expect Hercules or anyone else to come to your aid. Heaven helps those who help themselves." The Hare and the Tortoise. A hare was one day making fun of a tortoise for being so slow upon his feet. "Wait a bit," said the tortoise. "I'll run a race with you, and I'll wager that I win." "Oh, well," replied the hare, who was much amused at the idea. "Let's try and see." And it was soon agreed that the fox should set a course for them and be the judge. When the time came, both started together, but the hare was soon so far ahead that he thought he might as well have a rest. So down he lay and fell fast asleep. Meanwhile, the tortoise kept plodding on, and in time reached the goal. At last, the hare woke up with a start and dashed on at his fastest, but only to find that the tortoise had already won the race. Slow and steady wins the race. The Lion and the 3 Bulls. 3 bulls were grazing in a meadow and were watched by a lion, who longed to capture and devour them, but who felt that he was no match for the 3, so long as they kept together. So he began by false whispers and malicious hints to foment jealousies and distrust among them. This stratagem succeeded so well that ere long the bulls grew cold and unfriendly, and finally avoided each other, and fed each one by himself apart. No sooner did the lion see this than he fell upon them one by one and killed them in turn. The quarrels of friends are the opportunities of foes. The Shepherd and the Wolf. A shepherd found a wolf's cub straying in the pastures and took him home and reared him along with his dogs. When the cub grew to his full size, if ever a wolf stole a sheep from the flock, He used to join the dogs in hunting him down. It sometimes happened that the dogs failed to come up with the thief, and, abandoning the pursuit, returned home. The wolf would, on such occasions, continue the chase by himself, and when he overtook the culprit, would stop and share the feast with him, and then return to the shepherd. But as some time passed, without a sheep being carried off by the wolves, he would steal one himself and share his plunder with the dogs. The shepherd's suspicions were aroused, and one day he caught him in the act, and, fastening a rope around his neck, hung him on the nearest tree. What's bred in the bone is sure to come out in the flesh. The Lark and the Farmer. A lark nested in a field of corn and was rearing her brood under cover of the ripening grain. One day, before the young were fully fledged, the farmer came to look at the crop, and, finding it yellowing fast, he said, "I must send round word to my neighbors to come and help me reap this field." One of the young larks overheard him and was very much frightened, and asked her mother whether they hadn't better move house at once. "There's no hurry," replied she. "A man who looks to his friends for help will take his time about a thing." In a few days, the farmer came by again and saw that the grain was overripe and falling out of the ears upon the ground. "I must put it off no longer," he said. "This very day I'll hire the men and set them to work at once." The lark heard him and said to her young, "Come, my children, we must be off. He talks no more of his friends now, but is going to take things in hand himself." Self-help is the best help. The Hound and the Hare. A young hound started a hare, and, when he caught her up, would at one moment snap at her with his teeth, as though he were about to kill her, while at another he would let go of his hold and frisk about her, as if he were playing with another dog. At last the hare said, "I wish you would show yourself in your true colors. If you are my friend, why do you bite me? If you are my enemy, why do you play with me?" He is no friend who plays double. The Eagle and the Cocks. There were two cocks in the same farmyard, and they fought to decide who should be master. When the fight was over, the beaten one went and hid himself in a dark corner, while the victor flew up onto the roof of the stables and crowed lustily. But an eagle espied him from high up in the sky, and swooped down and carried him off. Forthwith, the other cock came out of his corner and ruled the roost without a rival. Pride comes before a fall. The Dog and the Wolf. A dog was lying in the sun before a farmyard gate when a wolf pounced upon him and was just going to eat him up, but he begged for his life and said, "You see how thin I am and what a wretched meal I would make for you now. But if you will only wait a few days, my master is going to give a feast. All the rich scraps and pickings will fall to me, and I shall get nice and fat. Then will be the time for you to eat me." The wolf thought this was a very good plan and went away. Some time afterwards he came to the farmyard again and found the dog lying out of reach on the stable roof. "Come down," he called, "and be eaten. You remember our agreement?" But the dog said coolly, "My friend, if you ever catch me lying down by the gate there again, don't you wait for any feast." Once bitten, twice shy. The Travelers and the Plane Tree. Two travelers were walking along a bare and dusty road in the heat of a summer's day. Coming presently to a plane tree, they joyfully turned aside to shelter from the burning rays of the sun in the deep shade of its spreading branches. As they rested, looking up into the tree, one of them remarked to his companion, "What a useless tree the plane is! It bears no fruit and is of no service to man at all." The plane tree interrupted him with indignation. "You ungrateful creature," it cried. "You come and take shelter under me from the scorching sun, and then, in the very act of enjoying the cool shade of my foliage, you abuse me and call me good for nothing." Many a service is met with ingratitude. The wolves and the dogs. Once upon a time, the wolves said to the dogs, "Why should we continue to be enemies any longer? You are very like us in most ways. The main difference between us is one of training only. We live a life of freedom, but you are enslaved to mankind, who beat you and put heavy collars round your necks and compel you to keep watch over their flocks and herds for them. And, to crown it all, they give you nothing but bones to eat. Don't put up with it any longer, but hand over the flocks to us, and we will all live on the fat of the land and feast together." The dogs allowed themselves to be persuaded by these words, and accompanied the wolves into their den. But no sooner were they well inside than the wolves set upon them and tore them to pieces. Traitors richly deserve their fate. The laborer and the snake. A laborer's little son was bitten by a snake and died of the wound. The father was beside himself with grief, and in his anger against the snake, he caught up an axe and went and stood close to the snake's hole and watched for a chance of killing it. Presently the snake came out, and the man aimed a blow at it, but only succeeded in cutting off the tip of its tail before it wriggled in again. He then tried to get it to come out a second time, pretending that he wished to make up the quarrel. But the snake said, "I can never be your friend because of my lost tail, nor you mine because of your lost child." Injuries are never forgotten in the presence of those who caused them. The caged bird and the bat. A singing bird was confined in a cage which hung outside a window, and had a way of singing at night when all other birds were asleep. One night a bat came and clung to the bars of the cage, and asked the bird why she was so silent by day and sang only at night. "I have a very good reason for doing so," said the bird. "It was once when I was singing in the daytime that a fowler was attracted by my voice and set his nets for me and caught me. Since then, I have never sung except by night." But the bat replied, "It is no use you doing that now when you are a prisoner. If only you had done so before you were caught, you might still have been free." Precautions are useless after the event. The two pots. Two pots, one of earthenware and the other of brass, were carried away down a river in flood. The brazen pot urged his companion to keep close by his side, and he would protect him. The other thanked him, but begged him not to come near him on any account. "For that," he said, "is just what I am most afraid of. One touch from you, and I should be broken into pieces." Equals make the best of friends. The seaside travelers. Some travelers, journeying along the seashore, climbed to the summit of a tall cliff, and looking over the sea, saw in the distance what they thought was a large ship. They waited in the hope of seeing it enter the harbor, but as the object on which they looked was driven nearer to the shore by the wind, they found that it could be at the most a small boat, and not a ship. When, however, it reached the beach, they discovered that it was only a large faggot of sticks, and one of them said to his companions, "We have waited for no purpose, for after all, there is nothing to see but a load of wood." Our mere anticipations of life outrun its realities. The beekeeper. A thief found his way into an apiary where the beekeeper was away and stole all the honey. When the keeper returned and found the hives empty, he was very much upset and stood staring at them for some time. Before long, the bees came back from gathering honey, and, finding their hives overturned and the keeper standing by, they made for him with their stings. At this, he fell into a passion and cried, "You ungrateful scoundrels! You let the thief who stole my honey get off scot-free, and then you go and sting me, who has always taken such care of you. When you hit back, make sure you have got the right man." The farmer and the stork. A farmer set some traps in a field, which he had lately sown with corn, in order to catch the cranes which came to pick up the seed. When he returned to look at the traps, he found several cranes caught, and among them a stork, which begged to be let go, and said, "You ought not to kill me. I am not a crane, but a stork, as you can easily see by my feathers. And I am the most honest and harmless of birds." But the farmer replied, "It's nothing to me what you are. I find you among these cranes who ruin my crops, and, like them, you shall suffer. If you choose bad companions, no one will believe that you are anything but bad yourself." The Man and His Two Sweethearts. A middle-aged man, whose hair had begun to gray, courted two women at the same time. One of them was young, and the other well advanced in years. The elder woman, ashamed to be courted by a man younger than herself, made a point, whenever her admirer visited her, to pull out some portion of his black hairs. The younger, on the contrary, wishing not to become the wife of an old man, was equally zealous in removing every gray hair she could find. Thus it came to pass that between them both he very soon found that he had not a hair left on his head. Those who seek to please everybody please nobody. The Shepherd's Boy and the Wolf. A shepherd's boy was tending his flock near a village, and thought it would be great fun to hoax the villagers by pretending that a wolf was attacking the sheep. So he shouted out, "Wolf! Wolf!" And when the people came running up, he laughed at them for their pains. He did this more than once, and every time the villagers found that they had been hoaxed, for there was no wolf at all. At last, a wolf really did come, and the boy cried, "Wolf! Wolf!" as loud as he could. But the people were so used to hearing him call that they took no notice of his cries for help. And so the wolf had it all his own way and killed off sheep after sheep at his leisure. You cannot believe a liar even when he tells the truth. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this reading of Aesop's Fables, please leave me a like and subscribe to my channel. More videos are coming soon.